All right, guys, we are at the point of our last panel for today, but it is a great one. Please welcome four very, very rad horror authors. I have Miss Misery, Fred Weehee, Francesca Maria, and Nicholas Grabowski to Sinister Creature Con.
Why'd I bring all this?
And I know we're one short, so we can share so they can pass down, or
Who are we missing?
Josh.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen.
So how's everybody doing tonight?
Good, doing good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I know, Francesca, are you guys cool sharing down there?
Sure.
Yes.
I wouldn't share with him.
So I'm excited to talk to you guys all because a phrase that follows watching horror movies more often than not is, yeah, but it wasn't as good as the book. And so what is equally as impactful, at least for me, is just reading a scary story or a horror novel. Like the imagery that you can come up with as the reader in your own mind, taking your guys' words, is pretty scary in itself, man, especially with some of the things that you guys can conjure up. So we can start with you, Miss Misery, and just kind of go down the line. I'm just curious, what got you guys into writing? Did you always know you wanted to be an author? Was there some kind of life-changing event, or what was it that made you go down this path?
When I was a little girl, my grandmother gave me the collected poems and stories of Edgar Allan Poe. And from there, it triggered my love of reading horror. So it was Goosebumps and anything I could get my hands on that was horror. Kids and not kids horror, which I wasn't supposed to read yet. But anyway, that's kind of what did it. And from there, I had a Trapper Keeper binder back then, and I would draw my covers to look like Goosebumps, and I would write my own short stories. And I would go from there. But yeah, Edgar Allan Poe, I think, as far back as I can remember, yeah, it was Edgar Allan Poe that got me started.
Right on. Fred, what about you?
No, that's a good person to get you started. Yeah. For me, actually, it started with horror movies. When I was a kid, I watched a lot of horror movies. The old Universal monster movies that were on Saturday matinees. I went to the movies a lot. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was a big one for me, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I collected monster models, and I still do. All these years later, I still do. I've got my whole living room full of my wife is so good, monster models and monsters and action figures and all that kind of stuff. I really didn't think about writing until I was in college. I was a history major, and I took a creative writing class as an elective just to have fun, and I got bit by the writing bug. And then after I read Dean Koontz's Watchers, that's when I said, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to scare people. And then took off from there.
So I grew up in a haunted house. And
you grew up in a haunted house?
I grew up in a legit haunted house. Lights going on and off, doors opening and closing, phantom footsteps in the attic, TVs going on and off, very much poltergeist. I was the youngest of 5, and our parents didn't believe us. And so I took to writing as a way of expressing myself because I needed to, get out these fears. So the first thing I wrote at the age of 6, as soon as I could learn how to read and write, I wrote a short story about a group of kids who stumble onto a haunted house at the end of a cul-de-sac. And looking back on it, I could see that it was very therapeutic because I wrote the kids getting through it. They conquered the monster. And so writing was a way for me to feel really powerful in a time where I felt very powerless. And I've been writing ever since.
Well, with me, when I was about 5 or 6, living in Bellflower with my folks and my sister, they showed like Mad Monster Party, which at that age it heavily influenced me. It was, I mean, if you know what I'm talking about, Rankin Bass's masterpiece. And it had all the monsters in it, pretty much. And it wasn't really scary, but it was kooky, and it was just fascinating. And then there was the Blob, which gave me nightmares. And so when I was in the 3rd grade at Thomas Edison Elementary School in Anaheim, our teacher had us watch Disney Tall Tales, like what's his name, Paul Bunyan, and stuff like that. And then she challenged us to write our own tall tale, like a page and a half, something. So we all did, and we had to go up in the front of the class, and we had to read them. Well, I got hooked, so I started. It got to the point that I kept writing one almost every day, and just almost every day. Okay, Nick, come up. Let's hear your new story, your new tall tale. And so I'd been writing ever since. I started writing screenplays when I was about 10, and I would give them to my teachers and see what they thought, and they would like jot down notes and stuff. Almost got published in Jack and Jill magazine when I was that age. But they thought that it was a little too quirky. And then later on, my first novel, mass market paperback novel that ended up getting published in 1988, I started writing that because of my love of horror and blah, 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 but in my high school math class because I was bored. And I just started writing. I had a story, and pretty much because of my church background, and I was going through like a phase where I was kind of getting tired of church. They were kind of treating me wrong. And so the story ended up with, the pastor and the church getting blown up at the end of the book. You bought that book today. And then professionally, I mean, what really got me started as a professional writer was through acting, because in Hollywood, my acting coach was Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in Star Trek. And he was coming out with a science fiction novel at the time, and his publisher's sister was in the class. And I asked her, I just finished this book. Can I send it to your brother in New York? And she said, sure. And 3 months later, he calls me up and he says, that book is wonderful. We want to publish it. And that led to Halloween 4, the novelization, and all of my other stuff. And I've been writing all my life. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's cool to see you guys, kind of have like these things that have this impact on you, whether they be real world or just fandom things. Francesca, you and I got to compare notes because my house is very haunted as well.
Let's do it.
The thing with a horror novel that makes it, I think, as a fan, more impactful than any other genre is the fact that you guys, I use the term you guys because you guys are all authors, but you could take concepts that are not scary, are supposed to be scary, and completely spin them on their head. And you guys can take serial killers and give them, almost, superhuman powers, even more so than what we see on the silver screen. So, what is your guys' favorite thing, our favorite character, favorite antagonist? But even though everybody is a horror fan, so the world would see them as an antagonist or problem. Horror fans will celebrate them as heroes. What do you guys, like writing, whether it be, real world things or vampires and monsters, serial killers, like, because just because your favorite thing could be the universal classic monsters, your favorite thing to write could be, a character like American Psycho. So what do you guys like writing?
Well, for me, I'm obsessed with true crime. I've always been obsessed with true crime. We could blame my dad for that because I would sit down on the couch and watch America's Most Wanted with him, which was great. Unsolved Mysteries as well, because it helped me as a little girl learn not to trust anyone, basically. And so true crime, the realization of it, serial killers fascinate me. Psychologically, they fascinate me because I can't understand why they do what they do, and it freaks me out. So I write about it. A lot of people are like, "Oh, serial killers been done so many times," but it's not that I love serial killers. It's just the fact that they fascinate me so much. I feel like in order to help me understand them, to get into their mind, I write more about serial killers. Yes, I love monsters, of course. I have a crush on Creature from Black Lagoon. I mean, but when it comes down to it, for me, I can write romance, I can write monsters, I can write stuff, but when it comes down to it, for some reason, I just always go back to serial killers. It's just my thing. I think it's more of a thing of writing it to help also warn others who read it, like, yeah, when you're walking home at night from your work, look behind you. You have every right. You have every right to carry a knife on you for protection, pepper spray, anything. I mean, I feel like more than anything, younger generation need to read more about serial killers. They need to try to, not relate to them, but figure out for themselves that it's a dangerous world out there. And there's a lot of crazy people out there. And I just feel like true crime and watching true crime and listening to it is just, it helps. And I think writing about it helps because I guess when I was a little girl, I was almost kidnapped in front of my garage. So I think that's why I'm so fascinated with it and kind of trips me out and freaks me out.
It's a solid reason.
Because he wanted me to go look at his puppy. So, yes. Yeah. Freaks me out. Last year, I had a run-in with someone who was in a white van and kept looking at my son and commenting about my son. Things like that really make you think. You know what I mean? So yeah, I go back to serial killers when it comes to my writing.
It's wild.
Now
It's
that
always
I've
a
weirded
white
everyone out. Now everyone's like, what? Sorry.
Well, I read somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, that the average person crosses paths with a serial killer 3 times in their life.
Crazy.
And don't know it.
Isn't that
So,
crazy?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not so, yeah.
Thanks, Fred. That's awesome.
And by the way, today it's not me, in case you were worried or whatever. But but that's what a serial killer would say. That's exactly right, Charlie. That's what a serial killer would say. For me, I'm all over the place. I don't know. I mean, I write about haunted, like in this one, a haunted insane asylum turned Halloween attraction. I write about vampires, werewolves, zombies, all of that stuff. I mean, it's always fascinated me. I've had my own brushes with the paranormal and ghosts, and do believe that there are spirits out there. I do write about demons and stuff too, but I don't believe in demons or God or hell or heaven. But I do believe in life after death and spirits that get stuck here. That when they die in a traumatic way or tortured or whatever, that they're lashing out by not being able to move on. Not really meaning to hurt you necessarily, but lashing out with their not understanding. But I think the biggest evil I enjoy writing about is humans. Like the antagonist in the new sci-fi horror series that I have called Bloodshot, the antagonist is a physicist who feels like he's been wronged by his girlfriend, both professionally and romantically, and then ends up murdering her because he thinks she's trying to steal his research. And he creates this device so he can travel from parallel universe to parallel universe, killing her over and over again. And there's this thing about love and hate, and that's the underlying message, that there's such a fine line, razor edge between love and hate, that if you can hate somebody, you can also love them. If you love someone, you can also hate them. And throughout the book, he still loves her and hates her all at the same time. And it's that human frailty and what goes on in our souls and our brains and how we feel about things that can turn. He was considered a genius as a physicist that can turn a normal person into something else. And your fragile psyche. And if you think about it, I'm sure everybody considers themselves normal. But is there something out there that could happen that could turn you that way too, that gets you off that razor's edge and make you do something that you wouldn't have ever dreamed of doing? I think that's the scariest thing. That and think about if it's like a loved one that you've always trusted and all of a sudden they're not that person anymore. To me, that's why Invasion of the Body Snatchers was always really scary to me, because these pods would open. It wouldn't really be the same person, but the pods would open and spouses and brothers and sisters became something else that you couldn't trust. So the scariest thing for me is someone that you've always trusted that now you no longer can trust. So I'm looking to go more in those kinds of directions, and because humanity is probably the scariest thing there is. Back to your serial killers.
Yeah.
And crossing paths with them. And hope I creeped all of you out.
So demons are real, Fred.
I'm sorry, demons are not real.
They're so real.
Okay.
So
That's okay.
I've got experience with them. So I love all monsters, and it's like asking me to choose my favorite child. My collection's all about my love letter to monsters. I've got 13 different short stories, all my take on a different monster: vampire, werewolf, etc. But what I've written probably more than others is demon stories. I grew up Catholic, totally scarred me for life. I know, scarred me for life. But when I kind of drill into it, it's that idea of losing your facilities. Like you're basically trapped in your own body, and you're looking out of your own eyes, but you're not in control of your actions. And you might even do harm to the ones that you love with your own hands and can't control it. And so there's something around, that fear of being not in control that kind of resonates with me a lot, and I write about that quite a bit in different versions, mostly demonic stories.
Okay. But it sounds a lot like what I was discussing and walking that razor's edge. So it's a matter of, is it psyche or is it demonic, or, I mean, that's always in question. I'm not saying, I'm open to believing in things. I'm not saying there are no demons. I'm just saying that I tend to think that it's more the human psyche than demonic.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I love monsters and creatures above all else. You hear about serial killers just about every day on the news. I like to give them wings, make them from another planet or from hell, from wherever. They could start off normal, but they could turn into something not just unstoppable, but weird. And kind of like, I guess you can look at it from Clive Barker's point of view. And Clive Barker does like crazy things with characters and has different points of view about where the characters come from, like in Nightbreed, where the monsters are the good guys and the people are the bad guys. And I really like twisting things around. Because you know, you could write a good or read a good book about a slasher killer and make it fascinating. It's not oftentimes as fascinating to me unless they turn into like a werewolf or a vampire but I work with creatures and monsters that are a little bit more original, that might have the flavor of something that you're familiar with, but something that's a little bit something that you've never heard of. There's something about them that you've never heard of before. And so I've done that with books like The Everborn, which it took me 12 years to write, and inventing like new characters, like a character that's like a half guardian angel, half genie, to these creatures that are basically alien watchers, but they've lived among us throughout the centuries, and they once they get somebody, they're all male, and once they get somebody pregnant, they start looking more and more fetal, to where they look like those bulbous-eyed aliens, and then they disappear and they become reborn, and the mother. So essentially, they're their own fathers, and these watchmates, I call them, are their guardians, and they're kind of interdimensional beings that have watched over them through the centuries. And also I gave even that a bigger twist, where one of those Everborn, they father a set of twins, and one is soulless, and he's a serial killer. And he finds out who he is, and he wants to kill the other twin so that he can be reborn again. And you know, and just like little twists and things that have a original kind of a flavor to them. And then, you know, that's what I always look for, is something that's not ordinary, or something that you haven't really thought of. I can elaborate even more, but I think that pretty much puts a finger on it. That's what I'm really into. I believe in demons. I believe in ghosts.
You're ganging up against me.
And I think that there's a reality to those types of things. But when I put pen to paper, I kind of go the distance to have them do things you're not used to reading about. Because I've seen it over and over again, to the point of it could even be cliche when it comes to stories about ghosts and demons and serial killers. But that's my forte, is to come up with a twist with these types of characters, to make them go the distance. You know, that's
Well, isn't that the true challenge of every writer, is that everything has been written.
Yeah.
The challenge is to not be derivative when you're writing it, and to give your own twist to a familiar story.
Yeah, make it sound original. Another way of doing that too is, once you write enough and you get good enough, you find your own voice. So it comes to the point that in these stories, if you get that far, then people can, for instance, you could blindfold somebody, give them a book, and not tell them who the author is, and then take their blindfold away and have them read a passage or a page, and they go, "Oh, that's Stephen King, or that's Clive Barker." That's when an author finds their own voice, and then makes things unique out of that, to where it's original.
Right on, man. The last question I had before we see if anybody here does is, do you guys have anything that you're doing recently that you wanted to tell us all about?
Yes, Slasher Girl 2 is finally out. So, Slasher Girl is a rape revenge story about a girl who's obsessed with horror, and after that happens and she breaks, she creates her own mask, her own outfit, she goes out and she gets revenge. Part 2 is out, and I started working on the third book about a week ago. So I'm hoping to have that out late next year. But I'm also working on a few, another Mr. Stabby book, which will be the last one for my Scared Yet slasher series. And I'm working on another one called Nightmare Con, which this guy inspired me to write by a look on his face. The last con.
Yeah, so this, I don't know if you guys, any of you guys were here in June, but June, the AC was broken. So it was
Yeah.
like 100 degrees in here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was stressed out about
Yeah.
whether or not we
Right.
were going to shut the room down. So this morning, Misery goes, you know, during our panel in June, you just had this look on your face. And I was like, okay. And she's like, and she goes into the story, and she's like, so I'm writing this story about a serial killer at a convention, and it's based on the look on your face. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah. So I'm working on that one thanks to this guy right here. So I'm working on that, and for those of you who do read romance, I'm working on another romance book. I know it's so weird and bizarre, and you guys are like, what? But they sell really well, so.
Can't you write a romantic horror story?
I am. It's called Halloween Kiss, and it'll be
Oh,
out
good.
next October.
Ooh,
There you
cool.
go.
Okay. All right.
I'm already on it, Fred.
That's good. Yeah, I remember June. It was hot. The sun was beating through the wall. I could feel it on my back sitting here. I felt like I was going to roast.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah, it was bad, which leads me into a novel that I just completed called Days of Fire and Ash about spontaneous human combustion. It's actually a young adult with an adult crossover kind of book about two young girls who come from different backgrounds, different nationalities, but meet at this place where this evil is going on and throws them together. And it's up to them to figure out what's going on and how people are spontaneously combusting. And meanwhile, they're losing family members, and it's growing worse and worse. And then I'm almost completed with a collection of short stories called Stories That Haunt the Mind and Soul. I've got maybe 3 more stories, and I'll be completed with that.
nice.
So I'm really excited. I'm doing an anthology for the first time as a publisher and as an editor. So it's called Black Cat Tales, and it's an anthology strictly on short stories and poems around black cats. What's really exciting about it is we've got 39 authors from around the world, many of whom this is the first time they're seeing their name in print. So that just tickles my insides. So we're putting that together right now. We just our Kickstarter just funded last night.
Nice.
So that's going to be coming out in 2025. And I'm also working on a second short story collection, kind of Lilith and, female protagonist and villains as well. So that's coming out next year as well.
Cool.
Wow. Right.
Well, me, let's see. I want to do something like I did with my short story novella collection, Red Wet Dirt, which a lot of the stories in it have been turned into comic books and graphic novels, and I'm trying to get out by Christmas time a comic book version of the first story in that collection called The Yuletide Thing, about a guy who takes his fiancée to a cabin and a Toby Keith concert. And she ends up turning into this creature that collects hearts, that kills people and collects hearts for the family's Christmas dinner. And it actually kind of looks like a giant mosquito, and it blows snow over the crime scene to pretty much get people to clean up after it. and make sure that everything looks like nothing happened, like they're hypnotized to do that. And so I'm trying to get the right people together to turn that into a comic by December. And also I want to do another collection like Red Wet Dirt. I'm starting to like doing collections more because like The Everborn took me, like I said, 12 years to write. And when it comes to a novel like that, it has to be perfect and it's going to take some time. It's like I've been thinking for years doing a sequel to The Everborn called Watchmates. And but looking at that, it looks like looking up at Mount Everest. I have to climb it. So short stories is like a little at a time, and if I come up with another collection, that would be great. The problem with me is I'm also a publisher. And with Black Bedsheet Books, I have like over 100 authors, and that's very time consuming. So I usually just put my writing aside for other people's writing. It's like a business choice, but I'm also really into a lot of what I publish. I find unsung authors that I could get really excited about, and I forget about what I do, and I just publish them. So I got to find an equilibrium so that I can take some time for my own writing as well as other people's writing. It's just like kind of difficult to do, to get things done, to do different things done at once and stuff. But I'm going to be coming out with a new collection very soon. But look forward to the Yuletide thing. Hopefully that'll come out this December. It's also been published in other collections too. That thing has been around the block. But and maybe some other stuff. I was talking to somebody earlier out there at my table, and they were trying to encourage me to get back into screenplay writing, because I was explaining how some of my work has been liked by big names like Stephen King, Clive Barker, and Wes Craven. And with Wes Craven, back in the day, right before he did Scream, New Line Cinema asked me to do a treatment for Shocker 2. And I ended up doing that. It wasn't produced because he was into Scream, but he liked it, people like it. You could actually download it for free on my website, downwarden.com. Speaking of Downwarden, that's a book that I've been thinking about in my head for like 20 years. People go, what's downwarden.com? Well, it's a book that I have yet to write. I want to take a look in my file cabinets again and see the scripts and treatments that I've written, and maybe, kind of push them around a little bit and see what happens again. And that's pretty much it for me.
Right on. Well, guys, that actually ran us to the point of our end of days. So thank you very much for coming. But very
Did you say end of days?
End of But thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today, for the conversation. And make sure, you got a couple of minutes tonight, but if you're coming back tomorrow, visit them at their table. See, they all brought a bunch of their stuff for you guys to check out. So definitely multiple options of all the books that they've written. So again, thank you guys, and thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.